Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee meeting for Thursday, December 5th. The time is 1:30 p.m. and we're going to start with a roll call. I see Councillor Campbell. Here. Councillor Crowson.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Palladino.
That's my entry. I'm here.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel is absent, and I also see that Acting Mayor Carlson is online. We have established quorum, and we're going to move to the election of the chair and vice chair before we go back to do the acknowledgement statement. So, are there any nominations for chair?
I would nominate Councillor Campbell as chair.
Councillor Campbell, do you accept that nomination?
Yes.
Are there any further nominations? As I see that nominations have ceased, Councillor Campbell is now chair by acclamation, and I will wait a minute for him to move over here. Now we will proceed with the election of the vice chair. Are there any nominations for that position?
I will nominate.
Turn your microphone on.
Linda Crowson.
What was that?
I will nominate Councillor Crowson as vice chair.
Thank you. Are there any further nominations? Seeing that, do you accept that nomination, Councillor Crowson? Seeing that no other nominations have been put forward, then you are vice chair by acclamation. Thank you, Councillor Crowson. I hope that he always shows up. All right, take over.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for all that. Start off with the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. City of Lethbridge offers respect to the Métis and all who have lived on this land and made Lethbridge their home. Move on to our adoption of the agenda. Be it resolved that the agenda of the regular meeting of the Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee of December 5th, 2024 be adopted as presented. I'll pass that on to Councillor Crowson.
Ms. Thompson, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
We do not.
Okay, I'll call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? That passes. Consent agenda from Councillor Deputy Mayor Palladino. Be it resolved that the minutes of Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee held on October 3rd, 2024 be approved and the chair and city clerk designate be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that the Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee receive as information the 2024-1205 status of directed resolutions. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there are no additions or questions, I will call for the vote.
There are none. Question's been called. All in favor? Great. Moving on to presentations. I see Janet Gutzel, Senior Subdivision Planner, Country Meadows Outline Plan Amendment. Step forward. And what song will you be doing? Thank you. The floor is yours.
Is my mic? Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, members of Assets and Infrastructure SPC. The application before you is to consider an amendment to the outline plan for the Country Meadows neighborhood. The existing outline plan was originally approved by MPC in February 2012 and amended March 2019. Country Meadows is located in West Lethbridge, as indicated by the red star on the map, and the amendment has been prepared by the engineering consulting company Stantec on behalf of the developer Southgate Commercial Land Corp. The plan area contains approximately 29 hectares of developed land and 103 hectares of undeveloped land, lying north of Garry Station and west of West Highlands. The Country Meadows Outline Plan Amendment has been prepared in accordance with the policies and objectives outlined in the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, the Municipal Development Plan, and the Country Meadows Area Structure Plan. This amendment complies with policies in all documents around housing type and neighborhood design. The existing plan is shown on the left with the proposed land use concept on the right. The areas of the plan that are being amended are highlighted by the red dashed line. New design approaches in the updated Country Meadows land use concept include the removal of a portion of high-pressure gas main on the east half of the plan area, revisiting the swing sites to provide more flexibility for residential housing types and mixed-use opportunities, and expanding the residential development into a narrowed Chinook Trail right-of-way as an opportunity to add density. The amended plan has been reviewed by staff and all technical concerns have been addressed. Our evaluation and analysis is on the slide above, and the details can be found in the land use concept document. The neighborhood notification covered the area 60 meters around the undeveloped portion of the neighborhood, and 120 letters were sent out. Confirmation was received that the letters were delivered before the Canada Post strike began. The proposed amendment was also advertised in the November 16th and 23rd editions of the Lethbridge Herald in order to provide residents the opportunity to speak at this meeting. I did not receive any communication from residents. The developer conducted an open house to which they can speak to. Our conclusion and recommendation to Assets and Infrastructure SPC is on the slide above. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your presentation. At this time, I'll ask if there are any members of the public who want to make a presentation at this time. And I see none. So I will open it up to questions from council. Do I have any questions from members of council? Councillor or Deputy Mayor Palladino.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Ms. Guts, oh, you're there. So you're still there. Good. What was the purpose for the narrowed Chinook Trail right of way? And won't that cause problems in the distant future being narrowed like that?
So at the request of the developer, City Infrastructure Departments reviewed the right-of-way requirements for Chinook Trail. So they did look at all the proposed infrastructure that will be going into that and the ultimate road cross-section. And it was determined that a 60-meter right-of-way was adequate for the infrastructure that was going to be required. And so that was narrowing from a previous 75-meter right-of-way.
They narrowed it from 75 to 6?
Yeah, from 75 to 60.
Oh, to 60. I thought you said 16. I was going to freak out. I'm good then. Thanks.
Any other questions? Councillor Crowson.
In a nutshell, what's the big changes here? I mean, we've got the narrowing along Chinook Trail. We have more stuff in the swing sites. Will we get more housing out of this? Is it just more flexibility to meet economic demands as things are changing? What's the main thing behind this?
The main thing is, one, the gas line was removed. So there was an existing high-pressure gas line that ATCO had in the east part of the site. It doesn't actually change the size of the parcel, but what it allows the developer to do is have more flexibility when developing those sites. So there aren't restrictions around what you can't place a building on a gas line, that kind of thing. So that was part of the amendment. And then obviously the narrowing of Chinook Trail allowed that. And then there was a commercial site in the original plan that the developer has looked at market conditions and feels that the commercial in the area around the Safeway development is adequate for the neighborhood, and they're not seeing that kind of demand. And so they wanted a bit more flexibility on that site to probably do some kind of mixed use development.
So essentially minor changes, but has to be here because only council in the end can make these changes.
Correct. When MPC was dissolved, council became responsible for making any land use concept changes. So these are, you've been seeing them in the past year or so, where we're now dividing outline plans into a land use concept document, which is what's in front of you, and then the technical elements, which are approved by staff.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Just a kind of a general question as we move forward in our world. Do area development plans make considerations for recharging facilities? For cars. Is that at all something that's in the thought process at all? quit smirking.
So Councillor Campbell, Lethbridge Electric Utility does comment on our outline plans, as well any area redevelopment plans, subdivisions, development permits. They have their own strategy in terms of understanding what their infrastructure and network can accommodate. And so that particular question may be something that's better directed towards General Manager of Lethbridge Electric.
Okay.
But they are within our circulations, and we do know that they are alive to that issue.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Sanchez.
Yes, just to add a little bit more to what Mrs. Kering was explaining, typically when they do this review, they have a team that is dedicated and they have a process in place to review those applications and see the capacity. For the most part, the capacity is there, but it's all about having the underground infrastructure ready to deploy these type of services. Working with the developer, working with the builders, that's part of the process too, and when they do their application, the electric team is the one that helps them to guide or navigate all the process.
Okay, good, thank you. No other questions? Nobody online? All right, thank you very much for the presentation. I do have a resolution from Councillor Crowson. Be it resolved that the Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council 1 approve the amended land use concept for the Country Meadows Outline Plan titled Land Use Concept 2024 as provided in Attachment 2. And 2, replace the land use concept approved by the Municipal Planning Commission on March 16th, 2019, retitled Residential Land Use and Density, pages 17 through 21 of the Country Meadows Outline Plan. Councillor Crowson.
I think it's self-explanatory. Call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Thank you. That passes. Great. Thank you. Next is a submission, Adam St. Amant, Transportation Engineer, 10th Avenue South and 9th Avenue South Functional Planning Study Progress Update. Mr. Amant is here. Maybe if you can just take a pop up to the podium. Ultimately, this is an update. This is ongoing. Maybe in a nutshell, give us how you feel things are going and where we're at. I know it's in the report, but just to make it public.
Yep, things are coming along. We did a visioning session back in the spring and worked with members of the community to come up with a vision statement for the project area or for the project corridors. And since then, we've continued to do a lot of the behind the scenes work. We brought a few cross sections forward recently and completed some community engagement. I think the report said there was 300 and some odd responses at the time the report was submitted. By the time we closed the survey, it was up to about 1,000 responses. So we've got a lot of good feedback to work with on this project. And now with that community engagement closed, we're still going through all the different comments and putting together a What We Heard report, which we hope to be able to present during the upcoming Community Conversations event. And then from there, we're going to continue on with the functional planning study and hopefully come up with a layout for the network.
And obviously, a lot of response to the engagement. So, would you consider this as in good engagement, or is this angry engagement? How would you describe it?
It's a mix.
Yeah.
It's fairly typical of functional planning studies. We get a lot of people who are interested in change, interested in improving, and a lot of people who are interested in keeping things the way they are right now. So we just have to go through those comments and figure out a lot of the constructive criticism to help us build the best functional plan for the area.
And so your plan for coming back to us is for when?
So we should be back with a functional planning study probably late spring, early summer of I've been getting this wrong, 2025, whatever next year is.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you for the information. As you know, there are people who come to your open houses and then people, usually not the same people, who complain online. One of the complaints we're hearing online, parking concerns, has the hospital been part of this, or hospital staff or admin been part of it, considering what we're looking at? Have they had a chance to do input into this?
Yes, we've been engaging with the hospital, both their the manager of the hospital and their parking people. So we have had them in on the conversations as stakeholders.
Okay, and the other thing, and I think you've heard it as well as we have, bike lanes. Oh my heavens, you might do bike lanes. Right now, it is just early planning. You are looking at all options and people can still do input?
Yep, although I think a lot of the input that we were looking for has come in this most recent round of engagement. And we have heard quite a few people that are not necessarily in favor of bike lanes. There has been, it seems like, a certain preference towards multi-use pathways where you've got the people and the bicycles sharing space. But we're, again, continuing to go through the comments and haven't figured out one way or another exactly how we're going to move ahead yet.
And as you already mentioned, community conversations is people's next chance to have a conversation with you as we continue looking into this.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Members of the public, if there's anyone from the public who wanted to make a presentation. And I see none, so we will continue with questions. Councillor or Deputy Mayor Palladino.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell, our chairman. Councillor Crowson asked the two questions I had lined up, but yeah, the 9th Avenue and 10th Avenue definitely need to take a look at, especially adjacent to the hospital and 17th Street. And I see you conducted a very robust community engagement program, and the community has identified the protection of trees and pedestrian crossings as priorities. And I was going to say, did they say anything about protected bike lanes? And that's what I would recommend. Well, I would recommend the word I'm looking for. I would prefer to see blended or pedestrian bike lanes as opposed to protected bike lanes. A shared trail, I guess, is what I'm saying. And the last comment was about the cross sections that you show, where you show the width of the road and then the properties on the adjacent side of the road. Is there a way to make those real properties as opposed to these generic looking buildings? Like, because I found it difficult trying to figure out where I was on those schematics.
We're I guess relying on our consultants and the software that they have, and I think there's a lot of just kind of pre-built. Here's what you have available to use.
Canned buildings. Yeah. You probably need a drone or something to take that.
A little bit more, graphic design and drone work.
Because they were all the same. They were the same buildings on every cross section, and I didn't know where I was. Let's put it that way. And I was born here, so it doesn't help. Thanks.
Questions? I see none. So I have a resolution from Deputy Mayor Palladino. Be it resolved that the Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council receive the 10th Avenue South, 9th Avenue South Functional Planning Study Progress Update for information. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming there are no questions or further concerns. I'll call the question then.
Question's been called. All in favor? That is done. Passed. All right, we have another submission. This is from Mandy Parker, General Manager, Waste and Environment, regarding cart relocation project update. Mandy's not here, though. Oh, you're Mandy. I'm Mandy. Actually, may as well just step forward and just, I mean, the report is there, but just to give the public a bit of an overview, how you got here and what your report is going to entail, or what your report entails.
Thanks, Joel.
Oh, and what song are you doing?
Again, don't want to hear this one sing.
Okay.
So really, we're bringing this back as a final update to talk about the cart relocation project. November 2022, we were directed to relocate about half of the residents who had moved to front collection back to lane collection. And so this report just gets into the details of how we underwent that process. So from the spring of 2023 until the fall of 2023, we did small batch moves of about 200 to 300 households at a time, moving those households from front collection to lane collection. The whole process started with an initial notification to all residents, whether or not they were being relocated or not. And then about 3 to 4 months after that, we hand-delivered letters to every resident who was going to be impacted by this change. We received, if I remember correctly, about 34 calls at the very beginning of the process from March to June after that first letter went out. And then we received just over 70 requests from residents when they started to receive the letters. And again, it was a pretty even split. We had, I believe, just over 42 service requests received from people who were unhappy that they were moving from front collection to lane collection. And then we had another 18 who were unhappy that they weren't moving back to lane collection. So fairly even split. But overall, it was a success. We were able to mitigate the cost impact of this through a route optimization exercise that we underwent in 2023. So overall, I would say that this went reasonably well, and now we haven't heard too many concerns from residents in 2024.
Remind me, is this a particular area of the city that you're dealing with, or was this citywide?
This was citywide. It was predominantly the north side, so the area from 9th Avenue to 18th Avenue was more impacted than other areas of the city, but there were areas on the west and the south side as well.
So as we move forward, the people that were unhappy with the way it changes, what's their status right now? It's just, I'm sorry, this is the way it's going to be?
So as of right now, we really tried to stick to those criteria that we used to inform residents as to how we made this decision-making process. So again, we really looked at these locations and said school zones, busy roadways, cul-de-sacs, and customer accessibility concerns. Those were kind of our 4 main parameters of assessing whether lane or front collection would be adjusted for these particular households. And yeah, generally, we've been able to work with every resident who's called in to, again, mitigate those concerns.
Oh, anybody from the public who wishes to make a presentation? I see none. We'll continue on with questioning Councillor Crowson.
You're going to question me? To wrap this up in a bow, you're doing this update because there was a request from council when this was made. Going forward, new houses are in the front, and this is now done.
Correct. The only caveat to that, I would say, is we have made an adjustment to our process to allow for medium and high density properties, townhomes, road townhomes. Those particular properties, if they fall on arterial or collector roadways, will be placed in the lane if conditions allow for it. So if we have unimpeded lane access where we don't have to back up, we will move those particular locations to lane collection.
Single-family housing.
Front collection will
it
continue.
going ahead. We've got a process we're going, and we have Mr. Sanchez who wants to add something.
That is correct.
Yep, just want to add quickly a little bit of background on one of the reasons why we did this, or one of the few reasons. One is health and safety, which we know is part of the process. It's also a little bit more complicated for staff and even the risk to do collection in the alleys. 2 was working in conjunction with the transportation department. Some of those alleys were not designed back in the day for heavy equipment like these ones that are going through them to do the collection. And that's putting a pressure on our alleys in terms of life cycle, the repaving, the service, the maintenance. So there was a significant cost savings that we were expecting to get, and we did get half of what we wanted to do. If I rephrase the comment back in the day, is half of the pie. So that half of the pie is now there. We have a process in place we're trying to improve. And in the future, we will always need to reassess and review because there might be an opportunity to have additional cost savings from both the transportation but also the Waste and Environment Department.
That was sort of my follow-up question, was some of that, because we were doing this for a couple of reasons. One was cost savings. One was back alley savings, because we were hitting fences, we were doing things like that. There were concerns. So do we have to plan differently? Do we have to think differently? Because we are going to be using up the back alleys faster than if we were doing only front lane. So when we make a decision like this, how do you plan? I don't need to know what the plan is, but how do you plan for the other results that we may not have been considering when we said, put them all back in the back alley?
So we've been able to, again, the newer neighborhoods have been planned much more deliberately with things like this in mind. And so we're not seeing types of issues that we're facing in the older neighborhoods, like overhead hazards, fence contacts. We're not seeing those in the new neighborhoods because, again, the planning has been much more diligent. So in the older neighborhoods, we've been working with the other departments to try and find ways to mitigate those concerns. We do continue to see additional incidents in the lane, a higher prevalence of lane incidents versus front collection incidents. But we're working with parks, for instance, to try and hold residents, ensuring that they keep those overhead hazards like trees from the city right away so we're not making contact. Working with telecommunications companies to try and ensure that they're meeting minimum thresholds for lines within these lanes. So we have found a few different ways to try and mitigate those concerns in the areas where we continue to do lane collection. But it is, to a certain extent, an ongoing concern for health and safety.
Yeah, last question, and that was the thing. What are we making sure as we do this? Because lane collection is often also more dangerous for our staff. I know I've done a ride along and I've also seen this where they have to physically sometimes get out and move things, which is why we want to automate collection. So are we ensuring that we have the best mechanisms in place as we do this to protect our staff and our equipment, but more importantly, our staff?
As you might remember, we had that risk and safety report that we brought in November of 2022, and there were some recommendations in there that we did implement. So even at the cost of efficiency, we always prioritize health and safety of our employees. So we've implemented some of the adjustments to how the routes are run to ensure that we can avoid backing up as much as possible. That's one of the biggest things that we've emphasized. And then working again with residents to try and ensure that where their cart is being placed allows for optimal collection so that our operators aren't having to climb over obstacles or deal with additional impediments where they have to do lane collection. So we've been working on some of the recommendations in that report.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you.
One of the more vocal areas of the city has been the London Road area, and I just wonder where are we at with rectifying all of their situations that they've come up and faced.
For the particular area that I have in mind, that particular area was relocated to lane collection. So we are now collecting that with a rear load instead of a side load collection truck. So again, finding different ways to collect, but we were able to, I believe, satisfy their concerns by relocating back to lane collection.
So, okay. So generally speaking, we're happy.
Yeah, again, I think overall we,
Good.
done well.
Any other questions from councillors? I see none. Thank you very much for the report and the update. I have a resolution from Councillor Crowson. Be it resolved that the Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council receive the Waste and Recycling Cart Relocation Project update as information. Councillor Crowson.
We've heard it. We can't unhear it. Questions called.
Question's been called. All in favor? Thank you. And that is a wrap. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
27 minutes, not bad.
Woo! And no song. Anybody? Are there any members of the audience who want to sing a song?